There was a flight from the bed. A thin figure, a wraith with arms, hugged me hard. "Turn on the lamp," I said. "I want to see what you look like." Actually, I had a fear of being in the dark with Deirdre, as if my brain would be too vivid. But with the lights on, there were no pictures of the night before. I was suddenly happy to see Deirdre. For the first time since entering the hotel, I felt back in myself again. "Well, give us a look," I said. She'd grown since I'd seen her last at Christmas. She was going to be tall and very slim. Already I could no longer kiss the top of her hair. Soft as a bird's feather, Deirdre's hair offered the suggestion of a wood where birds were nesting. She was not a pretty child. She was nothing but eyes, and stared at one with a clear, luminous look, an animal's fright, some creature with huge eyes. "I was afraid I wouldn't see you," she said. "Of course you would. I wasn't going to disappear." "I can't believe any of it." She always spoke like an adult. She had one of those charming accents which belong to children who have grown up in a convent. Something disembodied in her voice invoked the precise, breathless tone of her nuns. "Mummy doesn't feel dead." She doesn't. Tears came to Deirdre's eyes like a tide welling into two hollows of sand. "Nobody mourns her. It's awful." She began to cry. "Oh, Steve, I'm lonely." She said this in the voice of a full widow, then kissed me with the pure flesh of grief. "The shock must be worse for your grandfather than anyone else." "It's not shock. I don't know what it is." "Is he numb?" "No." Grief passed her by like a wind. She was thoughtful again. Suddenly I knew that the nerves were shattered. Her skin kept her intact, but the nerves spoke in separate, broken bits. One bit wept, another had a thought, a third was dumb. "Steve, I used to hate Mummy." "Girls sometimes do hate their mothers." "Certainly not." She was directly offended by my remark. "I came to hate her because she was awful to you." "We were awful to each other." "Steve," she asked, "can I come live with you?" "You mean at once?" "Yes." I was silent for a moment. "You know, Deirdre, it may take a while." "Are you in love with a woman?" I hesitated, but one could tell Deirdre anything. "Yes," I said. "What's she like?" "She's kind of blonde and sort of beautiful. She has a funny sense of humor, and she sings in nightclubs." "She does?" Deirdre was enthralled. "Oh, Steve, a nightclub singer. It's stellar to find a girl like that." She was profoundly impressed. "I want to meet her. Can I?" "Maybe in a few months. You see, we just began last night." She nodded her head wisely. "People want to make love after a death." "Hush, gros garçon." "I'll never be able to live with you, Steve. I know that now." She gave a wet adolescent kiss to my ear. "Good night, Deirdre, baby." "Call me tomorrow." She sat up in sudden agony. "No, tomorrow's the funeral. Will you be there?" "I don't know." "Grandfather will be in a fury." "Angel, trust me on this. I don't think I can go to that funeral. I won't drink tonight, but don't expect me at the funeral." She lay back and closed her eyes with a tense flutter of her lids. "I don't think your mother would want me there. I think she'd rather I thought about her in my head. That's better, I think." "All right, Steve." That was the way I left her. Ruta was waiting. "Well," she said, "was it very bad?" I nodded. "You should not go around killing mothers," said Ruta. I made no answer. "Listen," Ruta murmured. "You and me. You'll talk later." He's getting impatient. We went down the hall of the suite to a sitting room. Kelly was there, and an old woman I recognized. She had the reputation of being the most evil woman ever to live on the Riviera. No small reputation. And Eddie Ganucci was there. But I had no more than taken them in when Kelly was on me. He put out his arms and gave an embrace, a powerful, bewildering embrace, for he had never done more than shake my hand all the years I'd been married. "Bless, bless," said Kelly in a muffled voice. There were tears in his eyes, and looking at him, there were tears in mine, for he had some of Deborah's face, the wide, curved mouth, the green eyes with a needle's point of light. Some of the love I had never been able to give to her came rising up in me now. I was stiff and cold in the next moment, and wary of him, for the tears wiped from his face with one elegant pass of his handkerchief. He put one look into my eyes. Like a tracer of light, it leaped into me, and he had the secret. If there had been a doubt in his head, there was none now. He knew what I'd done to Deborah. "Well," he said. "Oh, good God, well, what a ghastly hour this is for all of us." And I could feel his emotion retreat. Like a bull, I had charged into the warm billow of a cape, and now was wrenched about to find nothing but air. "Forgive me," he said to the guests. "Oswald, of course not," said the lady. "I know I'm about to leave. You want to talk to your son-in-law, naturally." No, I won't hear of leaving," said Kelly. "Not for a little while. Let's have one drink." And he made the introductions. "You met Mr. Ganucci. He was telling me how the two of you were thrown together. That must have been fun. And Bessie. You know Bess." I bowed my head. Her name was Consuela Carruthers von Seagride Trelawney, and she was a distant cousin of Deborah's mother. "Have some brandy, Stephen," he said now. "I've been doing little but drink." "Shouldn't wonder. I've had a quantity myself." In the silence which followed, he waved Ruta aside, went to the bar, put a little Remy Martin into a large snifter, and passed it to me. I held the glass, but the promise to Deirdre was on me. I took no sip. Now another small silence developed, so I sat there holding my glass. The telephone rang. Ruta got up again to answer. "It's Washington," she said. "I'll take it in the other room." Presently Kelly returned. "It was Jack," he said to me. "He said to send you his regards and commiserations. He also said it was an awful shock to him, and he knows you must be feeling awful. I didn't know you knew him." "We met in Congress," I said. "Of course," said Kelly. "As a matter of fact, I met Deborah because of him." "Oh, yes. Now it's back to me. I remember she even said something to me about you then." "Oh, Christ!" he bellowed suddenly in a shock of sound like an animal receiving the blow of a bullet. "Excuse me," he said, and left the room once more. Bess said to Ruta, "Be a honey and put a cold compress on his neck. Tell him I have to go." The moment Ruta was gone, Bess turned to me and said, "Watch out, baby boy. Barney's up to mangling you tonight." "Barney Kelly don't go in for blitzes," said Ganucci. "No, Mr. Ganucci, you don't either, I'm sure. You just make a little money on dope and prostitutes and dropping wops into boiling asphalt," said Bess. We sat in silence. I went to the French windows, opened them, and stepped out on the terrace. I walked out to the end of it and looked over the parapet, a stone railing about 40 inches high, taking the gift of looking down to the street, all 30 and more stories of vertical fall, a swoop down some eternity of measurement to the wet pavement below, and a desire started up in me again, faint as the first tuning of a bow in an empty hall. I had a sudden thought. If you loved Cherry, you would jump, which was an abbreviation for the longer thought that there was a child in her, and death, my violent death, would give some better heart to that embryo just created, that indeed I might even be created again, free of my past. I stood on a deck chair and took the half-step up to the parapet. It was a foot wide, room enough to stand, and I stood on it, my legs jelly, and felt some part of the heavens, some long, cool vault at the entrance, a sense of a vast calm altogether aware of me. God exists, I thought, and tried to steal a look down the fall. But the street rose up with a crazy yaw of pavement, and I looked away. And then the wind came up with a sudden blast, like the impact of a trailer truck as it goes by, and I almost lost my balance. The fall to the street was sharp as a blade, Shago's blade, and I jumped off, back to the terrace, and looked at the French windows to see Kelly standing in them. "Here," he said. "Come on in." His face made visible by the light of the room, there was nothing in his expression to indicate he had seen me on the parapet, and perhaps he hadn't. And as we went inside, a force came off him, clear as a command. It was telling the others to go. Kelly stood at the door. He would walk them to the elevator. Rhoda was nervous when we were alone. She had obviously a great deal to say and very little time to say it in. But I was breathing relief. The parapet had left me weak, yet the weakness was agreeable. I felt as if I had come up out of a deep sleep. But I was back, at least in the room. Kelly was gone for a minute or two. There was respite. On this hearth, at this moment, Rhoda was nearly equal to an old friend. But then a look from her, sharp as a whiff of ammonia, awakened me completely. "Rhoda, your double life seems to be over." "That is too bad," she said. "I like a double life." "You didn't mind picking up after Deborah?" "Oh, your wife was not neat. Rich girls are pigs. But I am not just a maid, you know. And now you are, I was just about to say, a most extraordinary little spy. Nothing at all. I helped Mr. Kelly." But Deborah was dabbling with spies. Was she really? "An absolute amateur." "You don't expect me to believe you?" "She had no real standing," Rhoda repeated with pride. Nonetheless, I said, "Deborah must have caused some worry." "Oodles of worry," Rhoda said. "Last night there must have been electricity burning in government offices all over the world. They had to let you go. Since nobody can know if you know a little or a lot, a real investigation would be ending der Teufel knows where." She had 3 lovers, that I know. "You don't know who they were?" "No." "Well, good. Let me tell you. One of them is an American who's more or less special." "In the government?" Pretend I didn't hear the question, Mr. Rochak. "And another?" "Another is a Russian who's attached to the embassy at Park Avenue. The third is an Englishman who is a liquor representative for some Scotch firm and used to be in British intelligence during the war." "Still is, you may be certain," I said. "Of course," said Rhoda. "That's the lot?" "She may have had something to do with a fellow named Tony, who was up to see her once or twice." "Did she like Tony?" "Not too much, I would say." "What was Deborah actually up to?" I asked. "If you want my real opinion," said Ruta. I do. She was out to embarrass her father profoundly. She wanted him to come to her, to beg her to stop all her amateur espionage before all the important people in the world decided Barney Kelly was up to something bad or could not control his daughter. But what was Deborah interested in? Lots. Too much. Believe me, everything and nothing. She was a gossip center, and she pretended to be important. If you really desire my personal opinion, I think it gave her tremendous sexual excitement. Kelly came back. Is Deirdre still restless? Asked Ruta. Very much so. I will see if I can get her to sleep, Ruta offered. Now Kelly and I were alone. He reared back his head as if to search my face. Have a talk. All right. It's going to be a small funeral, and we'll bury Deborah in a nice place I've picked. You were nowhere around this morning, so I had to decide on it. It won't be hallowed ground, of course, but it'll be peaceable. We exchanged a stare. When the silence came off from me, did not falter, he added, You're going, of course? No. Is that what Deirdre was upset about? I would think that's what it was. Well, now, I want you to be there. I can't conceive of an explanation otherwise. You can tell people I'm too broken to show. I don't intend to tell them anything. If you don't show, it'll cause so much talk that you and me will never be able to get to the real thing. Which is? That we become friends. Kelly, I realize this has been quite a day for you. I have confidence. We're closer than you expect. He looked about. Now, I've got stories, he said. Once you're located where I am, there's nothing left but to agitate the web. At my worst, I'm a spider. Have strings, everywhere from the Muslims to the New York Times. Just ask me. I got it. Got the CIA? Put a finger to his lips at the directness of the remark. Threads. And Mr. Ganucci's friends? Lots of knots, said Kelly. I shifted in my seat. Not much of my story is pretty, he said. But then, I've warned you. Look, he added, it's a full warning. I'm putting a weight on you. I think everyone must tell his real little buried story sooner or later. He must pick out somebody to tell it to. But I didn't know who to tell it to. Tonight, as you came in the room, I knew. Suddenly, I knew. You're the one. He looked at me. A hint of gray ice in a river came out of the core of his hardiness. With your permission. I nodded. I got full custody of Deborah. In fact, the girl and her mother couldn't bear each other. Leonora had stashed her in a convent. Now Deborah and I had a home. Then what, I asked. Happy times, he said. He looked away. I was happy until Deborah got married to Pamphlet. Mind you, I did like him. Pamphlet was a bit in the style of Mangravidi, but he was much too old for her and ill. Well, let's not talk about bad parts. Deborah told me Pamphlet was a fine hunter. I was making conversation. I was uneasy. I didn't know if the story were finished or half begun. Pamphlet had been a good hunter once, and he did actually take her all the way over to Africa for the honeymoon. But Deborah did most of the bushwork with the guide. They weren't out long. Pamphlet was too sick. Besides, Deborah was having a damn sick time with Deirdre. Then she was pregnant when they married. Afraid she was. He shifted irritably. Now, what the hell do you want to know, he asked. Who Deirdre's father might be. You don't suppose Deborah advertised every last little fling, do you? But in saying this, her death opened again between us. All right, he said. There's a little more of the story. Can't conceal it from you, can I? He threw me a look, almost a jeering look. Well, he said, with a profound sigh as though relieved I had forced him to go on. You've guessed. There was something unusual. Listen to this. I couldn't even bear for Deborah to spend the night away with one of her little girlfriends. I had to call the parents at 1 a.m. to check on her health. If the poor child went out to a concert with a boy, I had the horrors. Then one night, Deborah came back 20 minutes late from a supper dance. I was so furious I was ready to fire the chauffeur. Took her upstairs, started to scold her. She tried to talk back. I slapped her, whereupon she burst into tears. Whereupon I grasped her, kissed her, put my tongue on hers. Kelly's tongue peeped out of the corner of his mouth, and then thrust her away. I thought I'd have a heart attack. She came up to me and kissed me back. Except that for a horror. But there was not exactly a horror between us. It was more like the tension provided by a joke, which is likely to reveal some truth about the man who tells it or the man who listens, but just whom is not yet certain. Kelly looked at me and said, I walked away from her, locked myself in my room. I had all kinds of thoughts. Suicide, murder, yes. I thought of killing her. Then I felt a powerful impulse to go to the window and jump. I stayed at that window for an hour. I was almost blubbering at my inability to take that simple jump. And the goat kept coming back. She's down the hall, said the goat. She's on her bed. It's there for you, Oswald. Lord, I said at last, I'd rather give Deborah up. And Deborah went back to the convent? Yes. You gave up your daughter? I did. Don't you see now why you've got to come to the funeral? It has something to do with her forgiving me. I know that. Good God, Stephen, can't you see I'm suffering? But he didn't seem to be. His eyes were a bright green. His skin was flushed. He had never seemed more like a big animal. Look here, he said when I didn't respond. Do you know why Ganucci came by tonight? No. Because he was in a losing position with me. Italians are clever. They understand the amnesty which is possible when there's a death in the family. That was clear enough. But do I choose to grant you amnesty? I said. I had finally reached his anger. His eyes gave a hint of murderous bad weather. What was that nonsense out on the terrace? A private expedition. Something to do with my story, could it be? It could be. Are you now ready to take a stroll around the parapet? I could hear Deborah's tones in his voice. They pushed me to answer too quickly. Yes, I could do it, I said, and had said too much. Could you? Not right now. Why ever not? I've had a lot to drink.
You wouldn't do it.
Not unless there was something at stake. He held his brandy glass and looked down into it.
What if there is something at stake, he said.
There couldn't be.
Let's really talk, Rojak. Let's put the pistols on the table. There's one reason why you won't go to the funeral, isn't there?
Yes?
It's because you did kill Deborah.
Yes. The silence had no air left. Yes, I killed her, I said. But I didn't seduce her when she was 15, and never leave her alone, and never end the affair. I leaned forward to attack him as if finally he were mine and I was free of waste and guilt, and looking at him knew this was exactly what he had wanted me to discover. Kelly was near to that violence Deborah used to give off, that hurricane rising from a swamp, that offer of carnage, of cannibals. The viscera of death came from him to me like suffocation. I waited for Kelly to attack. He came that close. I had only to close my eyes, and he'd go to the fire, pick up a poker. His stopped-up violence fired the room. His body gave off the radiation of a fire. There was heat between us now, the way there had been heat between Ruta and me in Deborah's hall. Suddenly, I knew what it had been like with Cherry and him, not so far from Ruta and me. No, not so far. And knew what it had been like with Deborah and him. What a hot, burning, two-backed beast. And I could hear what he offered now. Bring Ruta forth. 3 of us to pitch and tear and squat and lick, swill and grovel, fuck until our eyes were out, bury the ghost of Deborah by gorging on her corpse.
Come on, Kelly murmured, sitting on his throne. Shall we get shitty?
A death passed between us, like a beating of wings. And I was scored with the vision of Shago knocking on Cherry's door, and she opening to receive him, opening her wrapper, opening the heart of her thighs, the lips, the hair. I was certain Shago was with her now, just as I was here with Kelly. Or was a man being murdered in Harlem at this instant? The picture in my mind was broken with shock. Did I feel a broken, sawed-off bat go beating on a brain? Was a man expiring? Some cry going out into an alley of the night, carrying across the miles to the 30 stories of this room? All right, I said to Kelly. Let's go to the terrace. We went through the French doors and out into the air. It was raining hard now, and the smell of wet grass came through the night, riding the wind from the park. I didn't know if I could get up on the parapet. I had no strength. Have you ever done this? I asked.
No.
Never tried, said Kelly. Yes, but Deborah tried, I said suddenly.
Yes, she did.
Was she able to go all the way around?
She got off midway.
Poor Deborah, I said. Fear was back in my voice.
You are not the one to pity her, he said.
That provided me with just enough to take the high step. My fingers scraped on the wall. One nail broke and came half off, and I was up on that parapet, 1 foot wide, and almost broke in both directions, for a desire to dive right on over swayed me out over the drop, and I nearly fell back to the terrace from the panic of that. I stood there, pure cowardice again, my right hand shivering out of control as I took it from the wall and stood naked, supported by nothing. I was soaking wet, but I took one step, one full step, my foot like a 40-pound boot of lead, and brought my rear foot up to meet it, and took another step forward on the same heavy foot like a child climbing the stairs, with the right leg always in advance. Then I took a third step and stopped, and felt the huge sleeping bulk of the hotel, the tower behind me, and walls still rising to right and left across the chasm of the drop, and down below, walls falling down to ledges, and other walls, and falling again in a waterfall of stone. A gust blew up behind me, a slap of wind, As I swayed in it, I took the turn and kept going 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. I was almost halfway around, but the rain was icy cold. The temperature had dropped 5 degrees coming around that turn. I was somehow more exposed now. I took a step and another step. I was no longer walking with one leg dragged behind the other, but now my body kept leaning toward the terrace. I had a panic of standing straight, as though that might trick me into looking down the fall. The rain came in sharp as pins. Then the wind started up suddenly with a long screech of pain. Then I almost fell to one knee, for a blow came at me from nowhere, a fist on my back, and yet Kelly was 10 feet away. I pushed 1 foot forward. Then the worst gust of wind came. Deborah's lone green eye flew into my eye. Hands came to pull me off. Her hands. I smelled a breath. Was it real? It was gone. I took 2 more steps and reached the second angle. I was on the way back to the wall. I said to myself, "Get off now, you can hardly see." But something else said, "Look at the moon, look up at the moon." A silvery whale, it slipped up from the clouds and was clear, coming to surface in a midnight sea. As I approached the wall, 10 feet away, 8 feet away, 6 feet away, Kelly came near and I stopped. "It looks like you'll make it," he said, walking up to me. I didn't care to tell him I must do it again, back the other way. "You know, I didn't think you could make it," Kelly said. "I thought you'd get down before." Then the sweet smile came off him. "You're not bad, Stephen," he said. "It's just—" His smile was pleasant. "I don't know that I want you to get away with it." And he gave a push to poke me off, but I turned as he pushed and jumped down to the terrace and struck him across the face so hard he went down in a heap. I almost struck him again, but if I had, it would have been again and again. I was in a rage I couldn't have stopped. I went through the door even as I caught a glimpse of Rhoda coming out of a room. She had transferred herself to a negligee. But I was out and in the hall and took the fire stairs this time, running down 4 flights, 5, 6, 7, and came up breathless at the 8th to switch to the elevator. The cage came. It took me down the flights in one long sigh to the entrance of the street where the policeman had been. And there was a cab waiting. There was a cab. I gave Cherry's address. We were off. In a few minutes I would be close to Cherry again, and tomorrow we would buy a car. We would travel for a long time. Then God and the gods willing return for Deirdre. I could steal her from Kelly. There might be a way. And felt the beginning of a heart of happiness at being with Cherry. There was promise at the center of the thought. Suddenly, I knew something was wrong. As we came north on First, the road was blocked. 3 fire engines took up all but one lane, and a crowd of people had gathered, even at this hour. The fire was in a tenement a block and a half from the house where Cherry lived, far enough away for no one to notice that a police car was stopped in front of her door and an ambulance. There were no witnesses on the street, only faces at every window, and then my cab stopped, and I paid it off. Still another police car came up, and Robert stepped out, and seeing me took a quick step and caught me by the arm. "Rojak, where were you tonight?" "Nowhere," I said. "Nothing criminal." "Have you been to Harlem?" "No, I spent the last 2 hours with Barney Oswald Kelly. What's going on in Harlem?" "Shago Martin got beaten to death." "No," I said. "God, no," and had an intimation. "What was the weapon?" I asked. "Somebody broke in his head with an iron pipe in Morningside Park." "You're positive?" "It was lying beside him." "And why are you here?" The words came out as if they'd been printed on paper. "Why here?" Now he could begin to pay me back. He spoke slowly. "We were dipping down to see what Shago's ex might know. Then something came in on the box, not 10 minutes ago. Report of a bogey going ape in her room. That's all we heard. But now the street door to the tenement came open. 2 orderlies worked a stretcher through the hall door and the street door. Cherry was on the stretcher. She was covered with a blanket, and the blanket was wet with blood. The orderlies set the stretcher on the pavement and went to open the ambulance doors. A detective tried to move me away. My voice said, "She's my wife, officer." "We'll talk to you later," he said. Cherry opened her eyes and saw me and gave the smile she'd sent to me across the room in the precinct. "Oh, Mr. Rojak," she said, "you're back at that. Are you all right?" "Well, sir," she said, "I really don't know." Her face was badly beaten. "Get out of the way, mister," said an intern. "Nobody comes near this patient." I held to the hand grip on the stretcher, and the intern looked away for someone to assist him. I had another moment or more. "Come near," she said. I bent over. "Don't tell the fuzz," she whispered. "It was a friend of Shago's. He got it all wrong. So dumb." Now mysteries were being exchanged for other mysteries. "Darling?" "Yes?" "I'm going to die." "No," I said. "You'll be all right." "No, baby pie," she said. "This is very different." And as I reached out to her, Cherry gave a look of surprise and died. And Roberts took me to an after-hours joint, and kind as a mother, fed me whiskey. Then he asked me if I had anything to do with Shago's murder. And when I said no, he said, "Did you know she did some work for us?" Said it in such a way I would never know for certain. Not ever. There was something in his voice I could not for certain deny. And Robert said, "If you don't like it, Ratfink, take it out on the street." And when I, with all the courage of the ashes, said, "Yes, let's go to the street," Robert said, "Do you know what frustration is to a cop?" "Why, that's how we lose it," he said. "Our standards, our quality." And his features began to reef, and Roberts began to cry. "The cops and the Irish are the only men who know how to cry for the dirty, polluted blood of all the world."